personality-driven marketing, and the subtitle of it is Building Clients, Not Customers, and that's really what we're focusing on here, is how can we look at building clients that are going to stick with us and not customers. You know, when we think about a customer, we think of a person that does business with us one time and then disappears, never to be seen again. Whereas a client, we have an ongoing relationship with them, we have obligations to them, we expect to be in communication and see them again. So personality is going to be a really powerful tool in achieving that goal of maintaining clients and not customers. And so I want to start things off with a quote from Harry Beckwith. And that quote is, "Prospects do not buy how good you are at what you do, they buy how good you are at who you are." And in actuality, a lot of the idea for this came out of a conversation that we were having recently, which got me the idea for it, in that prospects, the first thing they're concerned about is how excellent we are as people and our personalities and who we are, and then the product comes second. So if you're a really excellent person, then people are going to be naturally inclined to buy from you and give the words that you tell them and the things you say more weight. And so we want to keep that in mind as we go forward in this conversation. And so the question is, what are the priorities of, or what are our priorities in communicating with these different customers? The first one is going to be business longevity. We want to look at how we can build a business over the long term and keep it successful. And then also, as I said, clients, not customers for life. So a lot of this is about relationship building. How can we stay in contact with them? What things can we do that make us stick out in their minds? And so a lot of this is going to be focused around that type of relationship building rapport, if you will. So I want to start off with a few questions and see if you can tell me who I might be describing. Parents were killed as a child and grew up to be a winged vigilante of the night. Who do you think that might be?
Batman.
Batman. You got it. So if you take a look at the next page, you'll see that the first Batman comic, number 27, May 1939, it cost 10 cents in 1939. Now, recently, 2012, Dark Knight Rises just came out. 72 years later, it brought in $1.01 billion after 72 years. So what I want you to start thinking about is, why do we care about Batman after 72 years? Why are we willing to pay? And that's worldwide. China, all over the world, Europe, Asia. Why is it that we're willing to pay $1 billion worldwide for Batman when in 1939, obviously, there's the currency valuations and such, inflation, but what is it about Batman that keeps us coming back after 72 years? Next one, this should be a really easy one. Shaken Not Stirred, Walther PPK, License to Kill.
007.
James Bond, 007. And if you look at that, now I can't name all of these. I'm a huge Bond fan, I might add. But, obviously the first and best, Sean Connery, followed by what I would say is probably the second best, which is Roger Moore. The third one, he only did one movie, that's in Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Cary Grant.
Is that who that is?
Looks like him.
You're right, it does. I don't know if it actually is, because he only did one movie. But next one he did pretty well, I think. Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan. I actually put him up there with Roger Moore, honestly, although I'm still a big fan of the old movies. And then, of course, Daniel Craig. The interesting thing about Daniel Craig, when I first gave this presentation, it would have been about 3 years ago. I've changed it since then. But when it came out, Daniel Craig was doing his first movie ever in the Bond franchise. And I personally was upset because they had taken away the martini, they'd given him blonde hair, and they took away some of the trademark things that made Bond Bond. And so at that time, I was wondering, and much like with reboots of the Batman trilogies and things of that nature, they had to kind of restart over, and I wasn't happy about that. And so as a long-term fan, it had me wondering, are they going to be successful with that? And the question was answered just recently with Skyfall. I think that broke over $1 billion worldwide, or is on pace to. And keep in mind, there's only been 13 films in the history of cinema to break the $1 billion worldwide mark, so that's not a common thing. But Skyfall is without a doubt the most commercially successful Bond film of all time. Yep, hands down. It is a tremendous success. Now, they've done 24 films over 49 years, roughly a film every 2 years. And so once again, we should be thinking, what is it about James Bond that keeps audiences coming back and back again and again. I mean, I've seen every James Bond film except for the last couple. Because, they start getting to the weird stuff like Quantum of Solace. I don't even know what that means. But, once again, why? Why is James Bond so popular 50 years later? And remember, he started off as a book by Ian Fleming. So it jumped media and is more powerful than ever. And then the last example I want to pull out, this one I think will be harder for people, though we should still know it. He arrives at Andrew Carnegie's doorstep on a cold, rainy night. And Andrew Carnegie presents him with an opportunity, and he has 30 seconds to make a life-changing decision. I've spoke about him before in PepNet in my educational moments. Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich. And essentially the offer that Dale Carnegie made him that night was that he would sit down with him and interview him and talk with him and allow him into his circle of elites to discuss what made them successful. And that ultimately changed his life. He wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. 76 years later, that book is still on sale at Barnes & Noble. You can go there and buy it right now. I read it once a year, have for about 10 years. Started out in 1937, so once again, the question is, what is it about this person, these things that keep people coming back again and again? And this is, really a classic in self-help literature. So if you haven't read it, it's definitely worth taking a peek at. And then come to this next section, you'll see little pictures like these. And these are ideas. Yeah, you like that? I always enjoyed that one. It's a funny picture. And it's just an example. When you see these, it's a transition to a new segment, but also the idea that that you can be fun in your marketing. And much like Harry was saying today, I thought that was great timing with what he was talking about, because that is exactly what I'm talking about. Is how can we be fun? And all that is a little bit of photoshopping and a picture, and that picture was actually taken with a normal digital camera in my living room against a white wall. And then that's been around forever. So something to think about as you move forward to this discussion. But I wanted to share with you the nuts and bolts of good personality-driven marketing. And you can think of these things as the items you need to include in your marketing materials and your discussion about yourself that makes good personality-driven marketing. And so, for instance, you've got the character. The nice thing about personality-driven marketing is you get to play that character, and you can be whoever you want. You don't have to stick to the tried and true way that you view yourself in your life. You can embellish things and really create a character that's likable and interesting to other people. And so that's actually a process that you go through over time and develop, and I have some more ideas and things about that in here. But remember that you get to play the main part. You're the main character, and you can be whoever you want because it's your story. So never forget that. Stories are an important part of personality-driven marketing as well. There's a variety of stories I like to use in my business to make examples. You might have heard me speak about the metaphor of the leaky bucket or your Wild West wagon wheel, some of these things that I use to get my point across. One story that's associated, that's not my personal story, that's associated with a phrase I like to use, unwelcome pest to welcome guest, in how we want to interact with people. And the story of it goes roughly along the lines of, this guy's working at home and he's very busy, very time-consuming, and he hears the doorbell ring, but he doesn't have time to answer it, so he continues working. And then, he hears a knock on the door. And he's still too busy to do this. And then finally, after a while, he hears banging on the back window of his house. And so finally, he's like, okay, I got to go investigate this. What is going on? So he opens the door. He's like, what is wrong with you? Your house is on fire. All of a sudden, that man went from unwelcome pest to welcome guest in a heartbeat. And you can believe that gentleman, everything that he now had his full attention. Everything he had to say about that fire on his house had his undivided attention. And so that's an example of a story that is developed over time, or that you can develop on your own, that helps get a point, certain phrases or points that you have that you want your prospect or clients to understand. What miracles are you known for? I mean, obviously, in storytelling, when we think of biblical, there's all sorts of miracles associated with Jesus that are a big part of the story surrounding that person. Miracles that I'm personally known for, I've turned 2,000% ROI. So that means someone paid $1 and got $200 back for every $1 they gave me. That's a personal miracle, if you will, that I have performed. And I think that all of us can think of different ones in our business. For you, Sue, it might be turning out a major project that was exactly how a person might like. You could be, and I know you're governed by FINRA and some of the things you could say, but the things that you've done for your clients could be that way.
I'll vouch for John. We just got one of our last statements, and in the last 6 months, and we've only been with John for about 6 months, we pulled in over $3,000. So, I mean, I can honestly...
See, there you go.
I'll give that testimonial there.
Mm-hmm. Boom. Yeah. And then also tough stains and things of that nature that, never would have come out, like Donnie talking about the stuff that he spilt. So we all have miracles, if you will, in our business that we've performed. And then dogma. What is it that informs your business? What are you known for in your business? There are all sorts of elements like that you can build in.
What's a dogma?
Well, the easiest way to put dogma would be coming back to, once again, a lot of these elements are perennial and timeless. You see a lot of these elements built into religion and other things. And so as it pertains to religion, dogma is church belief, doctrines, things that inform a certain faith, if you will. So dogma for me in my business would be image brand. You do not do image branding. You must have trackable returns on investments. It's sort of your belief system, the things that are different about you that make your business unique, that set you apart. The rules, if you will. Things of that nature. Testimonials, once again, social proof, and whatever people say about you is far more powerful than what you could ever say about yourself. And proprietary language. That's something I've been working on in my own business recently. For instance, I often use the phrase unique selling proposition, which is the reason why someone should do business with you versus all of your competition. My version of that is a map. Do you have a map to your business? A map being a major attraction principle that guides clients that are drawn into your business. So that's my way of saying something that's a widely known, USP, if you Google it, you'll find definitions of it all over the place. So, but I've turned that into a map, and then I've given it some story to it and saying that, if you need a road map in your business, then you must have a major attraction principle. Things of that nature. Another one I do, the 6 M's of marketing: message, money, market, match, makes you money. And then another example of this that you'll see around town, my favorite example is the 4-wheel friction reline. Just Brakes is the only company that offers a 4-wheel friction reline in town. No one else does. Everybody else offers a brake job, and a 4-wheel friction reline is a brake job. But they're the only ones that offer it because they named it a 4-wheel friction reline. So that's one way to put yourself apart from your competition, simply by saying you're different. And that's literally, they do brake jobs. It's just brakes. But it's not a brake job. It's a 4-wheel friction reline. So those are some of the nuts and bolts about it. And I'd like to kind of move on to building blocks for personality-driven marketing. Now, when you're writing a story for yourself about your business, you want to make sure that it's about your clients and your prospects. It's not about you at all. And that's what makes you think that this is a little different or a little tricky, is that when you write your character and create your story, it should be speaking to the thoughts, fears, emotions, drives, desires of your audience. So really, the first part of this is taking time to get into their mind. What keeps them up at night? What are their pains and frustrations? What are they most concerned about? Those are the type of things that are going to drive your story and your marketing, because you want to identify with them. And by doing that, it helps them feel that you're on their side. You go from, once again, unwelcome pest to welcome guest, because you've experienced much of the same things they have in life. Any good character's got to have a backstory, context. What led you to where you are? Some of the context to my backstory, if you will, that I use in marketing is the GKIC. About 3 years ago, I was involved in GKIC, which is the Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle, a group of marketers around the world that teach my specific style of marketing. And through that, I got to meet some very famous people and work with some names you've heard of and things of that nature. And also tied into that, I had a previous business before the GKIC, and then I have a different business than after that. And so I have a story or a context that talks about how I transitioned from the first business to the form that I have now of AfroMarketing. And so having that backstory and that context, any good, and you can think a lot of this like comic books, any good superhero is going to have a backstory. Once again, what were we talking about? Batman. Mugged in an alley, Gotham City, rich parents, orphaned, that type of backstory. And it has elements that people can identify with. And ultimately, a lot of this is about shameless self-promotion in that you're always going to be selling. You're going to be selling your ideas, your beliefs, your thoughts, why they should do business with you, your products, your services. You have to tell them and then tell them and then tell them again. And you're always going to be selling from that perspective. And a lot of it also, I think, ties into the gift shift in that I personally believe that anything I do marketing-wise is going to be in the best interest of the client. And when I work with them, it's in their best interest for them to give me money. So I am failing them by not promoting myself as much as possible. Like if I fail to get that client, I have failed that client because they're not using my services. I know that might sound maybe presumptuous or what's the term? Crass. I can't think of the word exactly, but the point is that I really do believe that that is beneficial to people, so it is in their interests and mine for me to sell them. And ultimately, when you're going through this, you want to write like you talk. So, instead of saying, give me that, you might say, gimme, or contractions instead of saying you or y'all, and all that stuff. I mean, you want to write how people talk, and if you're going to different markets, you'll want to speak in the way they speak. So if I'm writing a piece that's going out to affluent baby boomers on the north end of town, I'm going to write in a different voice than I would to 20-something techies that I'm trying to get to buy an ebook. So we definitely want to write like you talk and then shift that to the perspective of those people. So 4 more building blocks for personality-driven marketing. The biggest one is likability. We want to be likable. And regardless of what your personality is, you can change that very easily, whether or not you want to. And you can be likable in an instant. It's really just a shift in mind frame and a desire. And so, in the very least, whether or not you do in your own personality, we want to make sure that the character that we build, the person that we put forth in our marketing, is a likable person. And then what goes with that likability is going to be flaws and evolution. I think that this is a big deal, and especially making the... I'm having a hard time finding my words today. Damaging admission. That's what I was looking for, the damaging admission. We all have failed and we all have flaws and things, and putting that forth in your marketing. So, for instance, in the story that I was telling you before about the GKIC, I've embellished that story some, and I make the damaging flaw and say that, hey, I lost this business, and I make it out to sound like, oh, this horrible thing, but out of that birth came this new business. And so I failed at this business, but now I've succeeded at this business, and because of that failure in the past, and see, that endears me to people because I'm willing to say, hey, I've screwed up. I've failed. I know what it's like. I've been there. I've done it. And so I think that makes you more realistic. And then also development of the characters. If you look at some of those series that we were talking about, like Batman, the Batman of Batman Begins is very different than the Batman of Dark Knight Rises. At the beginning of Batman Begins, he's much younger. He's more virile. We find him, I believe he's learning from ninjas in the Himalayas or something in the first one. But by the time we get to the third, Batman is a beaten person. He's now limping. He's being told by his doctors that his cartilage is wearing out and that he's not going to be able to do this anymore. And then ultimately at the end of the film, I won't ruin things if people haven't seen it, but the point is, though, is you want to be exceptional but not perfect. And Batman is an exceptional character, but he is not a perfect character. Same thing with Tony Stark. That's a great example of this. Tony Stark is the millionaire playboy, likes to go out, have fun, do the drinking, the whole thing, models, all of that. And he's got that flawed personality, but he's this paragon of virtue as Iron Man. And so I think, and especially when you think about the casting of that, that's even more perfect because you've got Robert Downey Jr., who was known for all of his drug escapades before, rebuilding his career as Tony Stark, someone that has much of a checkered past as he does. So I think that the casting of Robert Downey Jr. and then the massive success that's come his way as a result of these 3 films, tremendous. And so I think that when you compare that as the movie and the arc that Iron Man goes through, and compare that to the arc that Morton Downey Jr. goes through, they actually parallel each other, I think. And so looking at that, that's really good storytelling. I can tell you that's not accidental. And when they cast him for the first one, they actually had to get insurance on his drug use. so that, basically if you blow the film because you go and get drugged out, then you're not getting paid, and, so on and so forth. That's how bad it was. And in fact, for many years, he couldn't work in Hollywood because he couldn't get insured. And so Iron Man was his big break. And so I think that there's a story to be told there. And of course, personal branding, that's much too big of a topic to get into today. We'll be flirting kind of around the edges of it. But I think that personal branding, personal power branding segment that we did a while ago covers that quite well. And I'd be happy to talk about that again at another time. So moving on once again, having fun with ideas. That's a great picture. I love that one. And that came out of a personal branding photo shoot that I took, where I basically had a catalog of images taken that I would then put on a white background, Photoshop out, and then work from that as a catalog of images that I could use. So the last part here coming up on, I wanted to discuss some about what Swipe and Deploy S&D is. Now, in my office, I contain a file cabinet that's got thousands of pieces of marketing from hundreds of people across hundreds of industries as well. So it doesn't matter if it's HVAC, products, carpet cleaning, financial advisors, automotive repair, restaurants, dental, you name it, I've got a file containing advertising from it. And so this is akin to what lawyers call boilerplating, where they take previous work and then use that on another client's work. Well, Steal and Distribute, Swipe and Deploy is basically the same thing. And what I'm talking about is you want to build at least a collection of ads, at least from your own industry, preferably from others, though, because looking outside of your industry will give you the best ideas for how to include personality. But essentially the idea is that you look over these different ads and then look at what do you like about them, what ideas can you get from them, what can you use in your business, and then you steal and deploy them. Now, this is perfectly ethical because of the distinction between plagiarism and research. I've done quite a bit of research in the course of my 2 degrees, and I can tell you that there is a very big difference between them. Plagiarism is where you take something from somebody, use it, don't attribute it word for word. Research is if you take something from 10 people, don't attribute it, and use it in your work. And that's the difference. When you actually take the time to research these different ideas and then form them together, you no longer have plagiarism, you have research. And so when I do an advertisement, I'm going to start by flipping through my file, finding, okay, what's the theme that I want to deal with? Okay, what kind of fun stuff can I include in there? Oh, this guy did some fun stuff, this guy did some fun stuff. And then you put it all together, iron it out, put it together, it looks much better, and it's completely legal. And you'll get a better piece that takes less time. So when I go over these things, I don't expect you to just go out and suddenly be like, okay, I know how to make my marketing fun. No. But what I have included, and you'll see on the next page, is that I have some different marketing pieces that I took out of my swipe files that I wanted to show you. I have about 5, 6, or 7 of them. I want to kind of tell you a couple things that I liked about it, what they were used for, and then maybe talk about how some of these things might be applied in your own businesses. So the first one here is, this one is actually arrives on a piece of X-ray film. You can say it says, actual smile of Alice Balb, manager of Memento's gift shop at Clark Fork Valley Hospital in Plains, Montana, after her team started using their smart register point of sale. So that could easily be Mrs. X smile after we removed that horrid, what was it called that you removed from that, you were talking about PetNet today, that from that house that was immaculate.
The blower motor.
The blower motor, yeah, that could be an actual smile of that client's name after we removed a 20-year-old blower motor. And then you could send that to maybe someone on either side of them or in their neighborhood or as a general piece. But that can be applied to basically anybody. Their smile after I increased their wealth or after I cleaned their carpets, what have you. And a lot of these are done through companies that I know of, so it's not that you have to figure out how to print on X-ray film, but I can actually give you the contact information for that company if you'd like. The next one, this is one that all of us could use very easily, and that's notepads. Interestingly shaped notepads. You can make notepads of yourself. John, you could have, I know a company that provides dollar notepads. And those type of things, these ones are really cool because they're apples that are literally notepads that you pull them out of. So there's a lot of different techniques and things that you can do, and that type of thing is really applicable to any industry because you're just putting your contact information, maybe a USP, a tagline, something of that nature on it. But, people do use these things, and before I have walked into offices where they are just littered with Post-it notes. Now imagine if those Post-it notes actually were your notepads that had your contact information and that's plastered across their office. That's a much different way of marketing than you might think of, and once again, it doesn't require much. You just have to figure out a unique shape that ties into what you're doing, and there are companies that produce all kinds of standard dollar signs, cheese wedges, you name it. So that's one that you can use, and also obviously doesn't require compliance or any of that other stuff. This next one, I always tell people not to send Christmas cards. Instead, send Thanksgiving cards. Christmas, everybody's sending cards. It's easy to get lost in the mix. Some people don't even advocate advertising during Christmas. I do. I just think you have to be aware of the glut of advertising that occurs and be prepared to fight against that. But, this is a Thanksgiving card. The outside's funny and hilarious. You've got the turkeys telling you to eat ham, chicken, and fish. And then on the next page, you'll see, and something like that, people are more likely inclined to display on their mantle during the season. But inside, you'll see there's a little cutout form that has an offer on it. And this can be easily adapted to any type of business, really. And essentially, it's just, please bring in this attached savings certificate. You've got your deadline. It's got reverse type block print, offer or two. And so that's put inside the card. So the card's funny. People display it on their mantle for the season. But then you've also got your marketing piece included in the card. Best of both worlds. So, that's something to think about. And, we're a little ways away from it now again. But that's a great little piece. The next one is half birthdays. This works well if you have a service that can be discounted. And think about it. If you already have a birthday card program in place, if you don't, you should. And then just tack onto that. You can now split that in half, send them a card every 6 months, your half birthday. And then, of course, it fits perfect with take half off a meal, take half off a one-room carpet cleaning, take half off a pen. There's all kinds of different ways, and I guarantee you no one in this room has ever received a half birthday card. I've never received a half birthday card. Have you?
Nope.
It's starting to make me wonder. So this next one, that is a message in a bottle. And that is actually printed up by a company called 3D Mail, and you've got your actual message in there along with a pirate eye patch, and that can be mailed through the mail. And you can do different themes like I'd like to save you from something, from the pain and frustration of dirty carpets, or you're sending out a message to all, and you can make this a call out to your specific target market for all people that are interested in saving money on a furnace but don't want to buy inferior equipment. That's not exactly the right way I want to word it, but you kind of see the idea that I have behind that.
I don't
Okay.
drink, but I have tons of bottles I can give.
Well, keep in mind, if you use a normal bottle, though, you're going to have to pay mailing costs for that. But these bottles are plastic and lighter, so you'll be able to. They won't be as expensive to send them. And then this next one is something that I was mentioning to John earlier as well. This is the. Is that not fun?
It's pretty cool.
And this is something. These cost anywhere between $1.25 to $10 a piece. But that is literally a business card, a regular business card that fits in your wallet that turns into a catapult, and will shoot stuff.
And they did away with this design. The design that you were showing me, this one is now gone.
Oh, really?
The new improved one basically just has two
Outriggers.
levers that come out, and rubber band's already on it, and you just basically launch.
Sweet.
It's a launcher. But yeah, that design they did away with. Maybe it was too expensive to manufacture or something like that.
Maybe. But, you can see it's got his contact information on there. And, this one I think is like a $6 or $7 one. It's one of their more expensive. So obviously you can't just have all of your business cards done this way to deliver. But if you have key clients or people that you want to impress, or you just want to reward someone that does a lot of business with you, it's a great way to do it. No one's ever given me a card that transforms into a catapult. I know if they did, I would probably leave it on my desk and show it to people. Probably shoot stuff at them when in the middle of a meeting or something. Be like, hey, check it out. And, of course, that's perfect advertising for your business, because who's going to throw away a card like that? Really, when you think about it. Next one.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, this is fun. Now, these are actually my mentors. I've met all three of these, worked with all three of these men. The one... Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So, the one in the white, that's Dan Kennedy, my mentor, known as the Millionaire Maker, author, speaker, and overall mentor to me. And then the one on the left, Yannick Silver in the red. The first introduction to my style of marketing I got was purchasing a course of his called Public Domain Riches, which taught me how to use public domain information in my marketing. So that was my first exposure to GKIC, was through him. And then in the black down there, the ever-attractive Bill Glazer. He's famous as the owner of Gage Menswear, author, speaker, and is a consultant to the menswear industry. And so you can see what they've done is they've essentially taken Vanity Fair, named it Insanity Fair, photoshopped their faces onto it, and then added some funny scripts to the side and underneath of it. Now, if you open that up, it's going to be filled with funny articles and things that actually do speak to it. It's basically an entire magazine that's an advertising piece. But certainly there's no reason, like, for instance, the swimsuit edition just came out. There's no reason why one of us couldn't plaster our faces on the swimsuit edition and do some type of timing to that. Once again, it's current events that are happening right now. Anytime you can key into that is beneficial for your business because you're already entering into the conversation already occurring in their mind. So that's always, always, always a powerful, powerful thing. This last page here is one that is very easy to do. These are just generators. If you Google sign generator, you'll find hundreds of entries from websites that do exactly this. So I got one that created a protest sign for me. I had another one that created a newsletter article for me with a headline that says, "Man swears under oath that his ads don't use illegal mind control." You've got my business name spelled out in alphabet soup there. Fortune cookie saying time is the most valuable resource you have. And, of course, my Black Power Afro guy on the safety first, affordable first-class results-oriented marketing. You can also go to mylifesignature.com where you can have signatures created for online use or for use in your promotional materials. And, this stuff is as simple as just Googling it, going to the site, and creating it. And then, you could easily slap, like that fortune cookie, I think would make an interesting back to a business card if you don't have a back on it already. Some type of saying could be attached to it. Some type of statistic about heating, air conditioning, or about carpet cleaning. And once again, these are all created free. And they have all kinds. They have warning signs, road sign generators like the big green highway signs, protest signs, all kinds. And, for instance, I was doing some fun stuff with the protest signs when Occupy Wall Street was popular. So I was doing some stuff with that to kind of, once again, get into what's going on already in their mind. So that is the kind of the different S&D ones I had. And now I'd like to open the floor up to any questions people might have or discuss strategies and ways that we could also implement those in your business. Oh, and also, you'll see one other sheet there that's got some recommended reading and recommended watching on there. And that's going to be a separate sheet at the very back. And that is just the movies, and I had a little typo there at the bottom, so that should say recommended watching instead of social media metrics or whatever it says. So I'd highly suggest taking a look at these. And there's the serial nature of storytelling means that soap operas, Days of Our Lives, very powerful stuff. I mean, that's been on TV since there was TV. I mean, I'm sure before that they were on radio in some form. So things like that nature. Comic books are very powerful. That's why the whole theme of this is kind of comic book oriented. Because if you look at any good superhero story that's been around for a while, it's going to have each of these different elements. And so watching those movies or reading those books will help also explore the topic more, I think. So what do people think? Is there something in the S&D portion that you think might be applicable to your business?
Well, I think keeping our eyes open, like you said, all the time, swap and deploy. Like if you watch The Voice or American Idol or Dancing with the Stars or anything like that, there's certain people that command people's attention. Mm-hmm. With their voice, their moves, their inflections, what have you, and what makes them successful or have that what they call it. Mm-hmm. I took my wife to a concert the other night in Denver, a group that she likes a guy named Bon Jovi, and so I was standing there, and it seemed like, I mean, the second they came out, everybody stood up, and no one sat down in that whole stadium for 2.5 hours. Wow. Nobody. So I didn't either, though I wanted to. And they knew when to raise their hands and which hand to thrust in the air and to point fingers or 2 fingers or 1. And exactly. these are 30-year fans. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen so many fans of any one person ever before. I've been to other concerts, but usually it wasn't like that.
No.
And this guy's built
got a cult following.
It's like a cult following, but that's sort of what Michael's talking about. Is building is what can we do? Why is he like that? And I was watching the show, and every time he would take a break for water, then the noise would go down, and then he'd just jump on the stage or raise his arms, and everybody would scream again. I mean, they were just yelling the whole time. But when there was he knew how to play the audience, and so it was good for me in watching how people move people, which is what business cards do, any kind of sales and marketing, and all these shows. Even though I'm never going to sing on stage, those guys that you watch them, and what makes me attracted to that person? And there's always something. There's some way they move, something they look, some inflection, something. Mm-hmm. And so our business personality can be the same. What is it that attracts people to us? Because really they're buying us. We all know that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, I mean, and of course you said it all in different terms, but like you said, personality-driven marketing. Bon Jovi figured it out. Yeah. And his sidekick, Richie or something, the guy who's been with him since the beginning, he wasn't there. And people were saying it's because of the contract, or maybe he's not in rehab again, or, who knows. But but the wild thing is, him not being there didn't have anybody not want to come to that concert. If Bon Jovi wasn't to that concert, then they would have given money back for the tickets. Mm-hmm. So even though they're a team, he's the star of that team, and we're the star of our business.
I couldn't say it better. I think you touched on some great points there, like the voice. Once again, that's great. That's huge right now. I believe his name is CeCe. Now, this is starting to get into music that I don't listen to as much, but there's an African-American producer on the show that dressed very distinctly every time I saw it. And I was like, what is up with that guy? Why does he dress that way? And so that was something that I noticed right away, because my girlfriend loves The Voice. I don't like those shows as much. So that was something that caught my eye about that character, if you will, on the show.
He's not on this year.
No, he's not. I noticed that because I just saw an episode just the other night, but that did... I did find that to be very interesting. And also, when you give your, like, for instance, your Ask Today, it's tied to current events. It usually makes people laugh. And I think that's a much better way to go about a 30-second presentation than, well, honestly, I think you give a better 30-second than I do, which is, I say my USP or my map. I give you my map. And then I give a specific request for a referral, and then I say my name again, essentially. But, you get the room in stitches every time. People look forward to when you stand up and speak about what your 30 seconds is. And I think that that's a very powerful way, and that's a great example of personality-driven marketing.
Because I'm not the best speaker there. So I have to do something else.
There you go. Got to play your strong suits. So I think that's just an excellent way to go about things as well. And, and another thing that you reminded me of is because I'm going to, in May, I'm going to go see Primus play, which is a band I've watched since I was 16. This will be about the 5th, 6th time I've seen them.
They're still together?
Oh, yeah. Well, off and on. They broke up, got back together, got a different drummer, got back together, got the same drummer, so gone their different ways, come back. It's been about 20 years or so that I've been listening to them. But the funny thing is, the first time I ever went to a Primus concert, I didn't know this, and I was confused. The whole crowd was chanting, "Primus sucks! Primus sucks!" really, really loud. And come to find out, over the years I learned that that's one of the things fans do. It's part of the dogma of Primus, is because Primus doesn't suck. And they joke, they made a joke on, TV at some point about how, no one even listens to us anyways because we just suck. And then so from then on, their fans at the start of every show chant, "Primus sucks." And and if you're not part of that dogma, if you haven't been a part of that relationship to Primus for 20 years, you don't know that. You go to the show, you're like, man, why don't these people pay money?
That was like me at the car. I didn't know when to raise hands and when to, I don't know the songs. But people were singing, and it's fun to see that, and then to see how that guy would walk on this little catwalk and reach out and touch people. And if they had a sign, he'd ask to see it, and he'd hold it up for everybody else to see, to get recorded on whatever video they're doing. And he gives back. That guy Bon Jovi gave back to the people the whole concert. Then afterwards, he kept pointing out the guitarist who was filling in for his friend, and he named everybody and how long they'd been with him, and
telling your story over and over again.
Over and over. Yeah, like you said, building your fan base, or
exactly,
in a sense.
That's interesting.
Exactly. And so whether or not we even, take specific things and use them or not, you can see how we can definitely make our marketing more fun in general.
Yeah.
And so that's really the key, because nobody's doing this stuff nowadays. No one's sitting out there trying to figure out, how can I be different? What can I do to make people laugh? Not always what can I do to get their money in their pocket, but what can I do to make them laugh? And I think Harry really hit the nail on the head with his education today. I might have to actually snag some of that from him too. So
I got a joke when we can do this. Actually, I'm stealing this joke. It was in the Reader's Digest. There's this gal that goes out, and every morning in Marksville like this, it says praise. She goes out and she stands on her porch. She says, "Praise the Lord." She's got a next door neighbor that's an atheist, and he says, "There is no God." She says, "Yes, there is. I'm going to praise the Lord." So she goes out the next day and she says, "Praise the Lord." He says, "There is no God." Next day she goes out and she says, "Lord, I'm hungry. Send me some groceries." Praise the Lord. The atheist says, "There is no God." So the next day she goes out and there's a bag of groceries on her porch. And she says, "Praise the Lord." And the atheist comes out and he says, "There is no God. I gave you those groceries." And she goes, "Praise the Lord," even more. She says, "I asked for groceries and the devil paid for them."
that's funny.
Well, it's funny. I was when I lived in Ohio. I was in my office and I heard this most irritating music coming from my yard, and so I look out and there's some Chinese lady doing Tai Chi on the corner had this big lot, and she would come out every day at the same time and do this Tai Chi, and playing that Chinese ping pong, boing, 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 boing,
I know
kind
exactly
of music.
what you're talking about.
And it was like, and it was hard to study because it pierced through the whole house like some kind of X-ray, and then within a few days there was some other gringo woman and started doing the Tai Chi with her, and within a couple of months there was a whole crowd on this lot right next to mine doing this Tai Chi. And it was just because this one woman was trying to find a place to do her Tai Chi. But she stood out and attracted attention. Mm-hmm. It was totally not Ohio style, this Tai Chi and this music, but people were curious, and it attracted attention. And that's what we want to do. It's different. Yeah. I didn't have people coming to my door wanting to dance with me.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And see, if that had been my experience, if I had seen that, well, then here's how I could turn that into a story for me. Say I just given the story just like you had. And that's why we need to be out there in the world, in our businesses, and regardless of what people think about us, regardless of whether or not we fit into things, just be out there in the world doing your thing, and then prospects and the wealth will follow. I mean, that's an easy way to turn that into a story about my business that I can then share with people. It's funny. It's interesting. I think it's a great story. So the question is, what could you do in your business to maybe take a story like that and tie it to your business? Because that's really all we're looking for is what hook is there? And so, think about it, because we've all got funny stories about our kids, our husbands, wives, what have you. And so that's really what it's about, because, story selling here. Let's talk to people. And this stuff is hardwired into us. I mean,
every song is a story. A 3-minute story with a beginning and an end. Every teaching is every show on TV is just a story that's well put together. That's why we watch it. Every everything. PepNet is a story each week. Everybody's telling a 30-second story, and if it's memorable, then it's easier to refer them to somebody else.
And when I talk to people, because I have relationships with people, obviously, that last beyond whether or not they're in PepNet, when I talk to them, they'll often ask, how was PepNet this week? What's going on there? And you're like, oh, well, Ron, he did this, and John was there. It was so funny he said this, and Mark, and just being able to talk about that, people want to know. So, but one other thing that I've also found is, like I said, if you really get down to things, a lot of this stuff, it is hardwired into the human condition. And if you look at any religion, there's going to be origin stories, backstory, context, just like I was talking about, the miracles, parables, characters, sidekicks, if you will. I mean, there's so many aspects of this that are directly applicable to all religions, and it just, to me, shows that this is something that in human beings. It's not something external. It's part of our human condition to like stories and to think in this manner. And so, any ways that you can incorporate that, and start small. Like I think Bruce, once again, he started changing the way he's been acting since the personal branding. But I think that what he's doing also borders on the personality side of things. He's now big, bad, bodacious Bruce, with his alliteration. And so I think that there's just so much room. And it's more fun. Yeah. I mean, isn't it just more fun to be able to do things like this? Because I think we get so caught up in trying to be, I must convey the low price point. I must convey the benefit. I must, sometimes people just need to laugh. And like another great resource, those internet pictures where people, put the captions on the kitties, or that's great stuff too. I mean, you can share that on your social media, and this is great stuff to move. If you're worried about it, I can understand in your business that maybe this type of approach wouldn't fit as much.
I've used that before. I sent people postcards where there's a kid, like a 2-year-old, on the phone, holding the phone like this, and there's a caption, and it says, "No, Grandma, hit the Internet Explorer button on the computer." And I just used that as one side, and the other side was it was basically a college planning concept. Make sure you're looking after your kids' college education. I related that, and I sent it to all my prospects, clients that hadn't started college savings plans for their kids, and I just want to make them laugh. But
yeah, and that's another thing too. Like for instance, recent events, tax season. Great opportunity. You could be sending out pieces that say, now that you've given your wealth to the government, it's time to work on getting it back, or something of that line.
that's a good idea.
With Christmas, many of you might remember the email I sent out where it was a PC Christmas, where I basically said, I want to wish you a non-gender specific, happy,
Crack up on that one.
Yeah, and I actually did offend a couple people with that. I did get one guy that was like, "Don't ever send me another email again." And I was like, "Whoa, overreaction." Okay, I won't.
Yeah, it was just that he truly did not want to offend anybody. So he says it's non-gender specific. I'm not wishing you a Merry Christmas, but I am wishing you, whatever you celebrate at the time. And I thought it was great because it's like, you can't please everybody all the time.
Nor should you try.
Yeah, but that was really cool. But what I was cracking up with what you were saying, somebody sent me. I'm into vinyl graphics now, so they had a cat, and it said "Grumpy Cat doesn't like your stick people family." So that's what, I don't know what brought that up, but it just cracked me up when you were sitting there saying something out of the ordinary.
Well, I do know, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap things up because I know we're on a tight schedule. We do need to be out of here by 11. But once again, you guys want to do a one-on-one, talk more about this stuff or ideas that come up from it, I'm always available as a resource for you. And I thank you very much for being here because without you, there is no mentoring program. So thank you for taking the time out of your day.
Thanks, Mike.